All right, guys. So this will be the inaugural
I
TDL podcast. I'm Jay. This is me and
am.
Jay right up here. Go for it.
That's Jay. I'm Cole. You've probably seen me on some of the primary and secondary modcasts if you care to watch that kind of thing. I've also been on 2A Lifestyle podcast. And obviously, I make annoying selfie videos, as several people have pointed out, for Tactical Dalai Lama from time to time.
Yeah. All right. So we figured we'd start this out, and we're not going to go too heavy. We're not going to go too crazy. It's just the two of us right now. Eventually, we want to bring in more people and do a more varied podcast. But we wanted to get this one out because we've been saying for 5 months, 6 months.
We've been saying for a really long time.
Yeah, we've been saying for a
Basically,
long.
since I moved into the new house in January, February. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're finally here. We both got a drink in hand. I assume. I don't know if he's
I
got.
have a monster in one hand and a screwdriver in the other, but I didn't feel like making Kyle late today, so I left the monster in the can.
That'd be rough. Okay, so yeah, so we all know what's going on in the world. You guys have seen some stuff. The main thing we want to start with is Epstein, and we did kind of cover this earlier a little bit. And we wanted to kind of finish the discussion here. So
Yeah.
I'll let Cole have the floor.
Well, obviously everyone jumps right on the conspiracy bandwagon when a celebrity witness commits suicide. And I think Epstein was the kind of guy who he had his business connections, and probably he's had an understanding since he started doing the bad shit that if he got caught, he'd probably off himself. So I don't know if the suicide itself is really where we need to be focused in regards to investigating this event. What I really think about is, why wasn't there a guard literally attached to his person 24/7? He's probably the most important political witness since ever. I mean, can you think of any political witness more important?
No, no, I think this is what we were talking about earlier. I think,
Monica.
yeah,
I mean,
that's what I said earlier. But I think you were right. I
Deep
think
Throat
it's
back
a
in 19 whatever with Nixon. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, like
since the Deep Throat tapes, there hasn't been anything that had as much potential to be politically disruptive.
I mean,
I
even
mean,
then, the deep throat tapes were really only potentially disruptive to a certain section of people. Like Epstein was
right.
reportedly, he could have taken down a very significant amount of very
And
high
it's
powered
not
people.
right, not just
So
left, not just right, not just communist, not
yeah,
just Republican,
we're talking
not just Democrat.
major
We're
influencers.
talking royal family, Saudi princess. Um, I mean, the trouble that I have is now I will never know whenever I come across something that says this is the Epstein papers, because I'm pretty sure that the prosecutor's office is never going to just release them
Oh yeah,
publicly in one format, whether it's true or not.
yeah. I mean, I hate to
Um,
be a conspiracist, but I really truly think those will go missing pretty soon here,
well, I
if
mean,
they ever
the
see
thing
light.
is there'll be so many fakes published because
Yeah,
everyone is going to make a page out of the Epstein report
yeah.
with their political enemy's name on it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that to me is the real loss here is we won't have his verbal verification of the records. So it will be hard. Um, and it might be that there's some stuff that'll stand up in court that I'm not tracking. I don't know. There's all kinds of hearsay exceptions and stuff like that, business record exceptions. But I think without the man himself to say yes or no, the records themselves immediately lose some credibility, and that's very frustrating. Because I would love nothing more than to see all of these fucking pigs just get roasted.
I mean, and that brings about another point that we hadn't really discussed yet. Is like where does this case go now? Like as someone who deals in legislation regularly, like this whole entire uh, prosecution, this whole entire base is being built on Epstein and
Yeah,
his word and his guarantees, like what he's been saying. Like where does it go from here? What happens? It doesn't just stall. It can't just stop. Can it? Like can it? That's I guess is my question. Like where
I
does it
mean
go?
I mean, it really depends on how far the prosecutor's office wants to take it. I mean that's the bottom line. It sounds like they've probably invited federal law enforcement to do some further investigation. So, um, I think because it's so politically charged, I think a lot of people are going to be afraid to touch it. I really
Yeah.
do. Um,
Just to clarify, I don't think he means physically afraid to touch it. I think he just means like it's almost it's a dangerous thing to touch because you don't know where it's going to go, right? Like you're talking not
right. I mean,
necessarily physical harm, but
it,
like
yeah, I mean, we all joke about like knowing the Clintons is deadlier than a war zone, right? Um, and it might or might not be true. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but I also there's a lot of stuff in there
I mean, I'm not really usually one. Yeah,
rumored to be a lot of stuff in there that let's say that you're an up and coming federal prosecutor and you're really going at it, your career might just mysteriously grind to a halt.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
there's that kind of stuff. We got to remember the people charged, or not charged, the people that are rumored to be named, got to make it clear we're talking about rumors, that are rumored to be named have been in power in the United States since the 1980s.
yeah,
So, no matter what level of government you're at, you still have first Bush bureaucrats running things and Clinton bureaucrats running things. Because government employees, even though we've seen a relatively high turnover under Trump, government offices don't really turn over that fucking much.
no,
Um, so the heads of these offices are not the same people who were the heads of the office under Clinton and the first Bush, or even under George W. Obviously, that's been changed out. But the meat and potatoes, paper pushers are people who have been around for probably more than one administration. So if you really want to think about deep state type shit, get real Ron Paul on it. That's what I would be afraid of. Is that if I was assigned to work on this case, is that my career would just poof.
yeah. I mean, I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't realize in general either. You see a lot of these people, a lot of people online, like me included. I firmly believe that if you're in the Senate, there should be a deadline. But people don't understand like things like the CIA director, the FBI director, the Veterans Affairs director, like those have turned over faster in the past what like 8 or 9 years than they ever
Right.
have. Like usually
Ever.
somebody in that job holds that job for 15 to 20 years, like minimum. They're there for a while. Like
Yeah.
that's the fact that these jobs are turning over so fast the last couple of administrations is an oddity. Um,
It is.
Not
It is.
necessarily a bad one. It
And I'm
has
not
forced
just talking
change, but
about like that those kinds of people. I'm talking about just like Joe Blow, who actually does most of the paperwork for the
yeah,
Department of State. Like your secretaries, your those people have the power to do or not do their job on any particular piece of paper that comes across their desk, any file that comes onto their computer. Um,
there's no oversight to Joe Blow in the back office either. Like,
right,
there's nobody
and
saying like
that's the
this
thing
came
is
through here.
like they do so much of the daily business that things could collectively go missing. We don't know. And it's that way. And that's one reason I fear government as a whole is bureaucrats have so much power to just basically lose stuff, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I think
Um,
we've had this conversation basically about not this conversation, but something along these lines at the same time, like about like soldiers, about like people are people run everything, and like
right.
you look at the military. The military's ran it's ran by men who are from the between the ages of 19 and 26. That's the
Yeah.
vast majority of everybody in the military is between 19 and 26. That's who runs it, and like you're not even allowed to drink in the United States till age 21.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like if you can't be
I mean,
trusted
think
at
about
21,
just to use the military, something that probably most of our viewers know about, as an example. Okay, you're a staff sergeant. You made staff sergeant. You're coming up on your 9 year mark. You are going to be eligible for sergeant first class. You send your paperwork up through S1, and somewhere, and you'll never know where, it just doesn't make it on time.
yeah,
It's a
right?
day late, 2 days late, 3 days late. You're not getting promoted that year.
Nope.
And that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about happen to people's careers if they do work on this Epstein thing. I mean, that's what they should be worried about.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
understandable.
I'm not saying that like necessarily they're going to wake up dead in an alley, but it's it's really it's very interesting to me
Yeah,
the potential for abuse if
yeah.
you do take on a high profile case. So
I mean, you said even just general disinterest. Like sometimes
right,
somebody will see a name, and like it's not they don't mean to like suppress information, but you see that name and you're just like, oh, I don't want to be attached to whatever that's going for. So
right,
you wait for you push it on to the next guy, and then that guy pushes it on to the next guy, the next
and
girl,
then you're
whoever.
past the deadline.
Yeah, and then eventually
You
you're
know,
past where you need to be, and it's nobody's. I don't want to say it's nobody's fault. It's somebody's fault.
it's
Multiple people's
everyone's fault
fault.
collectively, but you can't
But
blame anybody.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And there's no way to track that trail because if you bump a paperwork to somebody else's desk, like that's just a decision you made. There's no paperwork that needs to be done there. So I
right.
mean, it is what it is. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
My God.
I don't know. So crazy Epstein conspiracies aside, really other things going on legislatively that are interesting right now. We got wide open Republican support for red flag laws in the TAPS Act, which everybody knows what a red flag law is. Not a lot of people know about the TAPS Act. Um, my
Fine.
take on the TAPS Act is fuck no. Um,
Yeah.
so basically, what we've been doing in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria is using metadata, cell phone signals, social media posts, and the subsets of data that you can extrapolate from that. Like this person's talking about eating lunch at a certain time. We know they must be in this certain place because there's only these number of places they go to eat lunch, right? The refining of that data into targeting information. Um, they want to do that in the United States to figure out who, quote, mass shooters are going to be.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, it wouldn't just be used for that. I'm sure if you read the TAPS Act, it is intended to thwart any and all criminal activity at the federal level, which basically, if you use the internet to plan, carry out, discuss, link up with other people to commit a crime, you're committing a federal crime because
Yep.
it's. Um, so yeah, the TAPS Act scares the crap out of me, honestly, just as much or more than red flag laws. Red flag laws are scary because I don't trust people. I don't trust my neighbors to have the same political ideas I do. I don't trust people on the internet not to call the police and make some dumb false report about what I'm planning. But the TAPS Act allows a computer basically to misinterpret your data,
Yeah.
and that one, I think it's a Fourth Amendment violation.
Yep. Definitely.
Um, but the Supreme Court has held when you give information to a third party, such as Google, such as Apple, such as Amazon, that if they are willing to turn it over to the government, there's not a whole lot you can do about it because your expectation of privacy, which is the legal standard that's used in a lot of search and seizure stuff, you don't have under the law an expectation of privacy whenever you give your information to a third party. So that makes things like the Patriot Act, which already does a lot of this stuff, and the TAPS Act really terrifying to me. Um, you know,
I haven't read too far into the TAPS Act yet. I didn't. I just heard about it the other day. I didn't just hear about it, but I was put back in my perspective, I guess, the other day because I remember talking with it with a buddy who's a contractor right now, who was telling me like they're using the equivalent of TAPS in like in Afghanistan, the Middle East, to do ISR. It's like
yeah.
it's to and it basically it builds the entire package, where their communications come from, where it goes to, what it's about at its base, what they might be into. And me and him we talked about it for probably like an hour and a half, and he was just like, look into the TAPS Act. Like he was telling me, he's like, this is what they would, this is where it could go
And
for
I
the TAPS
think
Act.
I think we see a lot of people focusing on people who are proponents of red flag laws know that we're upset about red flag laws.
Yep.
So they are focusing on that and keeping our focus away from the TAPS Act
Yeah, because if you
to
if
a
you
large degree.
you look at the bright flashing light over here, you're gonna miss, you know, the matte black car pulling in.
Yeah, you won't
Yeah.
feel the hand till it goes up your ass.
Yeah.
You know, I mean
Exactly.
that's what they're trying to do.
I mean, it's a classic move, and it
I mean,
works. Like it
any
works so
government
well.
that can pass omnibus bills has the power to do this at any given time. Honestly, that's the problem. It's a big problem with just the way our legislature works. distract and then pass laws that people don't want. And then sometimes they put them in, a sunrise clause so they don't go into effect for years and years.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not really on the radar to be overturned or for people to be scared of until they actually go into effect. And at that point, it's too goddamn late.
I mean, you see something like when was it? I want to say it was the Healthcare Act, and it was I think it was Rand Paul was posting about it, and it was they didn't release the entire what was going to be read and like what was going to be voted on until like 2 days before it. It was like 900 and some odd pages, and
Right.
like it's just not possible. I don't care how ferocious a reader you are, it's not possible to get through 900 pages of legal jargon and understand it in a 2 day. It's not
Two
possible to do
days.
it. Like it's not
Two
possible
days.
to do it in a month, let
I
alone two
mean,
days. Like
we're talking laws that after they come out, the administration, the executive branch, spends years putting out administrative rules to enforce the actual law that the legislature passed.
yeah,
And that's because when you read it, you don't initially understand it, and you have to compare the different contradictory portions and see how they work together. And it takes professional bureaucrats sometimes decades to put a law fully into effect on the administrative side. So yeah, I mean it's absolutely ridiculous. Let's say that you said Rand Paul. Let's say you're a senator. You have 30, 40, 50, 60 people reading this bill.
hmm,
Each person reads a tiny portion of it. Two things to worry about. One, you can't get the big picture because you're not the one reading all of it. So you
yeah,
have to be able to look at the second possible problem, which is that one of those people just doesn't tell you something because they want you to pass the bill or they
yeah,
want you not to pass the bill. So you can't get the big picture. It's literally impossible because it's not all in your brain. And two, you have to be able to trust your staff to interpret it for you, person by person by person by person. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of people on staff in Washington, D.C. are there because that's where the power is, not because they like the person they work for. So,
yeah.
you
And I
know,
mean, even then, like even if you don't mean it, and this has been just blown, it's been blown through the courts multiple times and through legislation multiple times. Like humans are fallible. Like even if they
absolutely.
like if one word is misworded, like you can misconstrue an entire law. Um, just because that's it's not the way I'm not going to say it's the way it's designed, but it's the way it is. Is sometimes a single word can change
Everything
so much. So I
can
mean,
change everything.
so it might not be a case of somebody doing it on purpose. It might be a case of somebody just misinterpreting, and like that's the
Right.
scary part. Is like it's laws are
And I
written by
mean,
humans, are interpreted by humans, and they're enforced by humans. And in the end, like yeah,
credibility and trust is so multi-dimensional. I mean, I see it all the time on Facebook. Two people that I know who actually completely agree about an idea, fighting about it like cats and dogs, and like they're not getting anywhere when really I know that they agree because I've talked to them about it in person and I can read their inflection and see how they move their body when they were having the discussion. And that is oftentimes people who know that they probably agree.
yeah.
So you go to the Senate where we got people who know they do not fucking agree, and there's a lot of room for error. Um, well,
Let's
not room for error in the sense that error is not important, but potential for error.
yeah,
You
whether
know,
forced or accidental.
right?
Which actually uh, brings us around. So we're talking about these red flag laws and the TAP Act, and we should really go to a person who's pushing this stuff pretty heavily right now. A man who is uh, a lot of people back Crenshaw heavily.
They do.
They believe in him,
He's
like, and I will say like I believe a lot of stuff he says I agree with. I think he's
yeah,
very well spoken. He's very intelligent, and I have no problem saying I 100% don't agree with him on this red flag law thing. I think someone who has been through the things he has as an SOF operator and as someone who has lived in that life before should know exactly how dangerous this is.
right.
Um,
I
it's,
mean, once you've done violence on behalf of the government, you should understand how dangerous it is to take the reins off of that violence.
yeah,
Um,
and that's essentially what the red flag laws are: is telling the government someone might commit violence.
so let's
Um,
send officers to their house.
yeah,
I mean, and people always imagine like one or two police officers coming to the house. I'll tell you right now, in Illinois, when someone's FOID card expires, their firearms owner's
Yeah.
identification card, they send 24 officers
Yeah.
to their fucking house. One, what the fuck? How can your rights expire?
Right.
But 24 officers
Yeah.
hit people's houses on these FOID raids.
Yeah. And
That's
these,
just
but we're not talking
that's
regular
just
police officers
outrageous.
either, right? We're talking
No, we're
like
we're talking
full
TAC,
gear tack
like
team. Yeah.
TAC team. Like, um, that's not a fight that you could ever win. I mean, if I mean, just like if you look at just 24 dudes versus one or two and a dog,
Yeah. I mean,
they're gonna
and
shoot.
the thing about it
I
is
mean,
like
they shot somebody's kid in the kneecap on a FOID raid a couple weeks ago.
yeah. I mean, we
I mean,
we we make we make the memes about like the big igloo and all this other stuff. Like, and the reality of the thing is like it's a fight you can't win, but it's also a fight you shouldn't be put into. Um,
right, and that's the big thing is like let's keep it from getting to that
yeah.
point where, and structurally departments send officers on these raids, and it's a terrible risk for the officer.
Yeah.
And if someone starts shooting at the officers, it's perfectly reasonable on an individual level to shoot back.
Yeah.
So the officers are going to defend themselves. That's what people fucking do.
Yeah.
Um, you don't just lay down and die when you're in the middle of a fight. That's why I always laugh at these people who are like, I would never fight if they drafted me. I'm sorry, dude. They drop you in the middle of the jungle with a rifle and some dude starts shooting at you. You're going to shoot back.
Yeah, there
Like,
were many
but
so many cases of people who were
we
like in
have to
Vietnam
avoid
specifically.
we have to avoid that situation arising in the first
Yeah.
place.
Well,
That's
that's
the biggest thing.
and I think it's one of those
Um,
things that revolves around the fact that people are disinterested because it doesn't. And the post I put up the other day, the video I put up the other day, like they're disinterested in the fact that right now it doesn't pertain to them. It doesn't. It's not
right.
in front of their face. It's something that
It
it might be a problem later on. But like the fact that this has got backing on both sides and from the NRA, and just up to
well,
POTUS Trump himself saying like
it's
well,
weird with the NRA right now because I don't think the NRA has actually made a statement, which to me is acceptance. That means that they either want it or are willing to allow it to happen. But I will say that the two biggest NRA spokespersons, um, Dana and Colion Noir, have both been very outspoken against red flag
yeah,
laws. So that's
yeah.
comforting. That's comforting.
I mean, it is,
So
but like, at the same time, like NRAs definitely disagree with them at the same time, and I think not saying anything is just as big as saying something because I think
it's
with
just
the
telling. It's telling about the state of the NRA. Like,
yeah,
I'm angry with the NRA for coming out in favor of the bump stock ban.
yeah,
Um, very angry. However, it shows structurally that organizations like Save the Second have sort of been working to overcome the corruption in the NRA. The NRA doesn't even have the capacity right now to make a statement because the corruption is fighting so hard against the antibiotics that are fighting it.
yeah.
Um,
Which I don't, and I mean, this was a thing on our site for a little bit, but like I don't think abolishing the NRA is the answer. I think
mhm.
it's got too much power and too much backing to just throw it away. I think it can be fixed. I think it can be used. It's a tool. That's what it is. And people,
Yeah,
it is an organization, but it's an organizational tool. And there are so many people. Like I don't know.
they
I
have the fundraising base set up
yeah,
already. People don't I say people, that's too vague, but younger gun guys don't often appreciate the input of so-called boomers. But what we can do if we are able to salvage the NRA as a rights organization is fund those dudes' retirement funds and their inheritance when they fucking croak into the fight for our rights.
yeah,
And the NRA is the only organization that has that fundraising in place.
yeah. Like the second
So
is gaining traction, but like the NRA is just it's been in there since oh god, how long is it? Like I don't even know. It's like 80s,
the
90s,
NRA has been around.
forever. They're
Dude, the
ensconced.
NRA, and it's one of the big gripes that I have with the NRA is that the NRA was one of the organizations that was very pro National Firearms Act back in 1934.
Yeah,
So the NRA has been used often as controlled opposition. I'm willing to admit that. But I think for the first time, and it's mostly due to the internet, I think the members are starting to realize that. And realizing it is going to let us fix it. We're going
Yeah.
to be able to fix it. It's just a matter of how much earth Wayne LaPierre and fucking Lee and their cronies can scorch and how much money they can embezzle on their way out.
Yeah.
But no matter how much damage they do, once they're out, the fundraising infrastructure, the name recognition is going to be crucial
Yeah.
moving forward. And I'm not saying I'm not a big proponent of other rights organizations. I love Firearms Policy Coalition, and I think more people need to be involved in a state-specific organization.
Yeah.
Um, the trouble with state-specific organizations is that a lot of time they're not single-issue organizations.
Yeah.
To me, your gun rights organization needs to be separate from your, I don't know, whatever else political shit you're working on.
Yeah. And well, and the thing about
But it
that too
often
is
isn't. It often isn't.
the problem with that too is a lot of times those organizations are so you get into a state like so you live out Midwest where getting a hold of one of those organizations isn't it's not a big ordeal.
Right.
And I live in New York, so if I want to get a hold of a gun organization, the furthest reach I have is like they're not even near the city. I'm not near the city, but my point is that like, it's in New York, a very democratic, very blue, very anti-gun state. These
Well,
organizations they're neutered by
well,
by design.
I mean, not just by design, but the state government is in blue states often very prone to charging them with tax fraud
Yeah,
or things that other organizations would automatically kind of just get away with just because they're a nonprofit.
yeah.
A lot of times, every nitpicky cent gets under really close scrutiny. And I'm not saying that it's wrong for there to be scrutiny, but when that scrutiny is enhanced just due to the stance of the organization, that is wrong.
I
That's
mean,
Obama era
hmm,
IRS targeting, you
I think it
know?
was about a year and a half ago. I think Governor Cuomo from New York he pushed a bill. I think you're already shaking your head. You know what I'm talking about. He pushed that bill to basically like up the tax for insurance for the NRA in the state of New York, forcing the insurance company that the NRA was going with to drop the NRA. Um, Essentially, like they could have kept them, but there's just like there's no way to keep. You know what I
Right.
mean? There's no way to hold. You can't liability wise. You can't hold that organization at fault for what they did, dropping the NRA, just because like you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I was shaking my head because I was thinking about the finance law that Cuomo was pushing, basically to get banks and others to not work with 2A
Yeah.
organizations.
I think that's
Um,
what I'm thinking
I'm
of.
telling you
Not the.
right now, if you put 2A organizations in the same boat as recreational marijuana distributors, and they can't move their money around, um, you're gonna see a suddenly very outspoken group of people develop.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it didn't happen, but at the same time, I thought it would be a really polarizing moment for the 2A community. Um, yeah, I don't know. I
Well, I
don't know.
think that's the thing. That's the thing as well. Is like really, in all honesty, it's just a polarization is what we need. Um, in the end, just 'cause, like there's so many groups that are kind of they're so close. You know what I mean? Like if this is Group A and this is Group B, we're right here, and they're just so close to it. But like there's no reason for Group A to come to Group B because Group A exists for Situation One and Group B exists for Situation Two, but nobody's thinking about Situation Three, which takes the rights away from both groups.
From
So
everybody. Yeah, and that's like red flag laws. Red flag laws
yeah,
should be under scrutiny from people who care about the First Amendment. They should be under scrutiny from people who care about the Second Amendment.
and the
Sure as
fourth.
hell will be under scrutiny from people who care about the Fourth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment.
Yeah.
Not to mention due process doctrine as laid out in the original Constitution and the 14th Amendment.
All right.
I mean,
So
it really undermines the entire system of checks and balances.
yeah. So for those not in the know, can you? 'Cause I don't know the exact wording. The Sixth Amendment is fuck. The Sixth Amendment. My brain is out of here. It's fucking gone, dude. I'm
Sixth Amendment is sort of confrontation clause
okay.
stuff
Yeah.
and due process for trial. Let me pull up the exact text of it. It'd be easier for me just to read it.
Yeah. Like the fourth is basically privacy,
The
right?
fourth is freedom from search.
Yeah.
Um, Sixth Amendment. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of their accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. So the way courts will get around making red flag laws unconstitutional. They'll rule them constitutional because they'll rule that having your firearms taken away is not a punishment.
Yeah.
And under current doctrine, as long as something's not a punishment, the court can do it to you without due process.
Okay.
That's how they get away with civil asset forfeiture. Um, that's how they get away with having sex offenders stay on the registry for their entire life because they have declared that being on the registry is not a punishment. Obviously, something that impacts your employability and your ability to live in your neighborhood safely without someone coming to your house and putting a pipe bomb in your mailbox.
And for those of you who
Those,
are iffy with sex offender rule, we can go with felon rule because felons are the same way.
yeah,
Once
yeah.
you're a felon forever,
Once
no
you're a
matter what.
felon, you can't vote, all that stuff,
Yeah.
and that's not considered a punishment. You know, so they've declared these things not punishment, which means that they can be. And it's the same with having your driver's license taken away after a DUI. That is not a punishment. That is an administrative action.
Yeah. Which is silly
Um,
because a lot of times, like the felon one is a personal one to me, just because I have a family member who, as a 16-year-old man, committed a crime. Like he did his time. He went to jail. He did his time. He did what he had to do. And now as an adult, uh, he's never voted. He can't vote. He can't own a gun. Can't do a whole bunch of things. Like so, basically, he can't exercise
he's
his
not a
rights.
functional member of society
Yeah.
because of something that he supposedly has been punished for and paid his time
Yeah.
for.
So he's the problem for me is like he can't exercise his rights, and that's not a punishment. I think if
It's
you're
very
being
much a
refused your
de
rights, it's very much
facto.
a
It's a
punishment.
punishment. It's a
Yeah.
punishment. It it would feel like a punishment,
Yeah. No, I
and
think
it's
I think we're
just
in agreement here.
it's just it's legal doublespeak to me that
Yeah.
they've declared that some things that impact your daily quality of life are not punishments. I mean, it's asinine,
Yeah.
but it is the way courts fucking work.
Yeah. Well, we've gone
So
on we've gone on a tangent here. We were talking about how it's not considered a punishment, so that wouldn't be. That's what's scary
so
about it.
yeah, and that's what I'm afraid of is when these red flag laws finally start appearing in federal courts that they'll just say, that having your guns taken isn't a punishment. No one's confining you. No one's taking money from you. So you're not being punished. So as long as we have a hearing about it after the fact, it's fine. That's a real danger. And all these Trump supporters who are like, Trump knows this is going to be an unconstitutional law and it's just going to get overturned. One, someone has to suffer under that law for that law to be questioned in court. You have to
Yeah.
have standing, which means you have to actively be a victim of the law. So someone would have to have been subjected to this torturous process for it to even be heard by the Supreme
Yeah.
Court, because they don't do advisory opinions, which is fucked up and wrong in the first place.
And then
And
someone.
secondly,
Go ahead.
there's a real fucking chance that they'll just say, having your guns taken isn't a punishment, no big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and like part of the problem with that is like it's not just that someone has to be subjected to it. Someone in the right position to be able to fight back against it has to be
Right.
subjected to it. So how many people who can't like
How many
that's
people
why
have the money,
yeah.
or the political clout to get an attorney, or if you take someone to the Supreme Court, you don't have an attorney, you have firms of attorneys.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah. So if they just enforce these laws on poor people, people with no political clout, minorities in the inner city, white dudes way out in the country who don't know anyone, who aren't generally liked,
Yeah.
it'll allow them to get pretty deeply entrenched into the way America functions before they make it to federal court.
Yeah. And then it's and then it becomes something with a precedent set beforehand because it's been going on for so long. There's a
Right.
precedent to it, and it's
And even
just
though that's not a legal precedent, if the court can say, this has been going on for a while
yeah.
and it's fine, that does help them find reasons to justify it.
Yeah. I mean that's why there are so many things that are going on and like that are still happening with like well, not still happening. They were happening up till a few years ago with like women's rights, with black rights, stuff like that, because it had been going on for so long that people didn't see
Right.
it as a problem. They just saw it as modus operandi. Just
Yep.
like that's just the way it
Exactly.
was.
And it took like some pretty revolutionary Supreme Court doctrine to change a
Yeah,
lot of stuff. I mean, it just
yeah,
really did. And I don't know that there's really anyone on the court who's as pro A as I am, pro 2A as I am.
yeah.
So,
But I think a lot of people
yeah.
have come out as like, I mean, like this is one of those things that I don't want to go too deep into, but like that was one of POTUS Trump's big talking points. He's like, I'm 2A. I think everybody should be allowed whatever. And now that we're out here, he is just rushing souls left and right, walking all over that 2A. And I think
Hmm.
the problem is a lot of people, and this I my personal issue with it is a lot of people think he is paying Peter to rob Paul. They think he's playing one side,
No,
and I think he is 100% like he's just like, oh well, it's okay. This is bad. Like
he
this
knows
is
he
the
can get
answer.
away with it
Yeah,
because his entire platform is on the libs. And as long as he can be said to be getting what he wants, he can say he's winning. And the people that voted for him want a winner.
yeah,
That's all they want. That's all they want. They don't
yeah,
give a fuck about policy. Most of them don't even know what's been going on. They don't understand this stupid economic bubble we're in. They don't understand the trade war with China. They don't care. They
yeah.
just want to be able to say our president's a winner.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's one of those things too. Like you see it on both sides because I know multiple people who have said like they disagree with something their senator said in a blue state, and they still went in on voting day and voted for that senator because they're like, oh, the other option is a Republican, and they're riding that
yeah,
party line. And I mean, I
yeah.
think some people are so blinded by this, and I hate to
The
beat
the
that dead
reason
horse, but
that Republicans like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham can jump on this red flag law train is that they know they're going to get reelected no matter what
yeah,
because that's their district's nature. Um, to get our rights back, we will have to go through a blue phase first, which means we'll lose more rights in the interim, and it's terrifying.
yeah,
But you absolutely have to show the Republicans that you're willing to let them go if they don't do what you fucking want.
yeah. Well, I think
Uh,
and the problem is so there's so much stuff, and it's through our government throughout the years. You see it. It's really, it's cyclic. It's cyclic. Like there's so many things that like you gain some ground, you go back and you lose that ground, and you gain some different ground, and you go back and you gain some more ground, and you lose that ground, and it just that's how it's
yeah,
always been. That's just with
it
our
is.
with our form of
And
government. That's just the way it kind of has to be.
and
Um,
I just got to say, like in regards to gun rights in particular, without doing a massive cleaning house of the Republicans and changing the nature of the party, we're not going to get any of our rights back.
yeah,
Because in the early days of the Trump administration, Republicans had 100% opportunity to pass the Hearing Protection Act, to
yeah,
pass any repeal of any like the Hughes Amendment or anything. They could have passed anything they wanted,
yeah,
and they could have given us national reciprocity. Any of those things, they had 100% capability to do.
yeah,
The fact that none of those things have been done shows you that the people who are in power in the Republican Party don't want those things, and they are not on our side. So,
well, I think right there with that one, like I don't know if I 100% agree with that statement. Just because I think what happened, my opinion, again, like more opinion, is that the drive early on was so far behind repealing Obamacare that everything else, without any shadow of doubt in mind, everything else took a backseat to that. And I
right,
think whenever somebody was like, "Well, what about the Hearing Protection Act? What about this?" Somebody's like, "Listen, let's just knock out this Obamacare thing, and then we'll move on to
yeah.
the next step in the rung." And it took somebody somewhere was very optimistic about their timeline, somewhere in there, and they were wrong
Well,
because it's the government. There's bureaucracy, but I
well,
think
you'll hear me mention Mitch McConnell over and over and over again, but the Hearing Protection Act was up for a Senate vote, and then he tabled it after the Parkland shootings. So he let the shooting dictate what he allowed to be voted on in the Senate.
yeah,
I mean, it's not, and we joke about Obamacare a lot or talk about it a lot. I'm kind of dead serious in most of my discussions, I guess, but it's the mandate has been overturned by the court,
yeah,
by courts, not by the Senate. So I think really like as soon as McConnell tabled the Hearing Protection Act, we should have known that this red flag law and all this other stuff was in the pipe
Yeah.
because his reptilian nature showed through.
And that's the thing too is I think as so your average everyday American citizen, you you have to insert emotion in everything you do in a
Yeah,
workspace. It's something you have to do every day. Like you have to be emphatic. You have to be sympathetic. And I think as a people, we forget that these lawmakers, these people who design and go through and interpret the laws, their whole entire job is supposed to be to like remove that sympathy, remove that empathy, and find out like the base.
right.
What is this law? What does it do? How
That's
will
the
it
difference.
impact?
The difference in a republic and a democracy where everyone has an earpiece and they press yes or no for every piece of legislation. You know, I mean, the representatives of the republic are supposed to be able to set aside current events and choose policy based on long-term values and long-term outcomes.
Yeah. But my point is like I think as a people we forget that and we let
Yes,
these people uphold through without with the emotions, with the sympathy and the empathy, and we don't take a step back and think like that's not their job.
right.
Like we make the
Yeah.
joke, and you made it a minute ago about these people being like cold hearted, cold blooded lizards, reptilians, I guess.
Maybe we'd be better off if they were a little more like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Like if they were able to actually table their emotions and not be human, like we kind of need people who interpret that stuff to be sometimes. Um, it's and it comes back again to what I was saying earlier. Everybody's humans are the problem. Um,
Yeah.
they're a disease, disgusting disease,
Disgusting disease. What did
killing Mother
Morpheus
Earth.
say? Humans are a virus. They kill the system. But
Right.
I mean, I think humans are also kind of the whole point. I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and that's we're asking humans to interpret laws and do all this other stuff for other humans, and like
So,
some of these people have been up there for so long.
oh my
They've
God,
never
dude.
and some of them
They're
have
just,
never been on the ground floor. I don't think some of these people have ever been anything but the 1%. And like as that's not a scathing review of me saying the 1% is out of touch. Blah blah blah. This is me just saying like these people have never been
well,
they've never survived paycheck to paycheck.
the bigger problem that I have is that they've been actual government, they've been legislators for so long.
Yeah,
Mitch McConnell and Bernie Sanders, for example, have just been there forever.
yeah. Well, I
Um,
mean,
Neither one of them has ever really done in the part of their life that their brain is able to remember. They've never done anything other than be a lawmaker, you know?
even
So,
then, like it's and I've made this statement in a conversation with a few people who is like so people who get into government and are long term government people, like a lot of times those people they go through law school, they go through judge school, they go through some form of school that deals with legislature. So like you start that early on in your life.
right.
Like you came to it in your 30s, but even then, like you've always been interested in laws. I remember this back when we were
Yeah.
in
Oh man, I like to
third
fight
grade.
about
Like,
shit.
yeah,
Nothing's more controversial than politics, right? So
right.
it's
You
like,
were always interested in like the stuff that like you had to find somebody to discuss with because soldiers don't give a shit about anything. But
what time do I get off work?
right,
Yeah.
why are we picking grass out of the motor
Why aren't
pool?
we drunk right now? Yeah.
Right. So like you had to find somebody to discuss this in depth stuff with. And I probably wasn't your guy back then. I'm sure. I think. Well, I know who it was. I don't want to blast his name on here, but I think we both know who he is. Um,
Yeah.
good dude. Oh, but no, I think and a lot of those people like you come like you've always been interested. Those people have always been interested in that form of thought process of like the problem solving thing that goes into that, and eventually you like you just it takes up a large portion of your life, and it's a
Right.
very large portion of brain power. It's like it's these issues are they're controversial. They're meant to make you think.
Dude, I mean, people like us who are really concerned with policy and with moving forward, it keeps us up at night even though we can't control it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the bottom line. Like it's important to us. So,
yeah, and I think that's a lot of things like most people stay
um,
awake thinking about like what are they going to make like what's going to happen tomorrow like are they going to what's going to
yeah,
happen in that meeting what's going to happen like what if the milk is spoiled something it's like I'm not saying it's not important stuff but it's not like I sometimes like I'm sitting up like at night and I'm just thinking like, oh my god, like if somebody were to go to, these red flags laws were to pass, oh my god, excuse me, and somebody were to just like somebody from the VA were to look at my records, like there would be a team at my door, immediately, because like I have,
Yeah,
and
and you're
I'm
fine now. You
yeah.
know, it's not like
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I mean, that's the thing is like if you look in my, and I'm gonna kind of put myself on blast a little bit here and like put a little bit more of my stuff out there. But like I have a what would be considered by a lot of large government entities a history of violence, and not just through like my military career. Like before I joined the military, I spent some time in the foster care system. I got in trouble with the law more than a couple times for physical altercations, for resisting arrest. Actually,
yeah.
so I mean, like I have a history of violence, and like I haven't been in trouble with the law for anything other than I think I got a citation for my registration a couple years back.
You had a speeding ticket that I remember vividly a few years ago.
You're no, you're talking about the one where I had tips in my car.
No,
I don't know.
no.
There were
The
there were
one that I'm thinking about, you called me from that 72571 number that I now recognize because you had a
jail
ticket.
from the.
Because you had a ticket and you missed your court date.
Well, that was a fucked up one.
And I felt horrible, man, because I couldn't even bail you out. I was so broke.
Yeah. Well, no, it was a weird time. I couldn't bail myself
I
out
mean,
either.
right now I don't know if I could bail you out. Frankly, I.
Yeah, but I'm like
But it's
my
because I just ordered, 600 rounds of green tips and 1,000 rounds of
oh
9 mil. It's not because I'm completely fucking broke all the time like back then.
yeah.
You know.
Well, no, like my point is like the last time I had a serious issue,
Right.
was when was that? That was probably the last. That was like my wake up call. When I got
It's like
put in
before you joined the
overnight.
army, probably.
I mean that was 2000. I got out in 2011, so that had to have been 2010 when I got put in overnight when I was in county. So I mean like that's almost
Yeah.
10 years ago, and even that
Or
was from a speeding ticket. That wasn't a violent offense. That was from
right. It was
a
just a
speeding
speeding
ticket that I
ticket, and
thought
you just
I'd paid off.
happened to think that
Yeah, and so like,
Colorado is ridiculous about some tickets, man. I have
oh yeah,
people in jail. I have a guy who has been in jail 20 days, and his court date is on the 21st, and it's nothing but tickets.
yeah,
And he missed his court date. Warrant got put out. He got picked up in another county. Had to arrange for transport through the different county. I mean, it's like it's a horrible, horrible situation.
yeah,
But it happens to a lot of people who don't have a lot of money.
yeah. No, and I think that's the thing. That's the terrifying thing is like this. Some of these laws that people are going to get picked up on through the red flags and through the taps are going to be people who are nonviolent offenders. They're just offenders. Um,
Well,
and
let's try to use someone's criminal history to say what they're going to do in the future. We've all seen Minority Report, and it's
yeah,
kind of the go-to analogy for this. If even Tom Cruise could come out and say this is a terrible idea at the end, right? But but it takes the ability of the ability to change out of the situation,
yeah,
and people do change. Like I changed when I had kids. I changed when I took the bar. I mean, like who I am as a person has significantly changed from day to day throughout my life. And to say because someone has done this in the past, they will do this thing in the future. To me, the entire justice system as laid out in the Constitution is meant to prevent that.
yeah. I mean that's why you have a right to a trial. That's why you have a right to representation to
Yeah,
like the sixth, basically, to go through for somebody to look at your history and your past. Well, not look at your history and your past, but like to
the
take
state.
all of the information that at present and judge you in that way by a group of. That's why it's a group of your peers and not a group of legislators. Um,
Right. Our judges,
yeah,
worse yet.
because
Yeah.
like it's people
Let's
change.
yeah. Let's talk about speaking of change.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something less serious, man. This
All
shit's
right.
killing me, dude.
Yeah.
I'm
I
happy to
didn't.
talk about it, but I don't know if people want to listen to us. I mean, there's got
Yeah.
to be something funny we can talk about.
Yeah. We could do this for fucking hours.
Talk
We
about
just
some
sit here.
games,
Uh.
or what have you
Uh.
been playing?
Uh. PUBG mostly.
Yeah,
Um.
still, huh?
Still
Not
PUBG.
really still, but back on that horse, right?
Yeah, I guess back on it would be the word there. I've been doing a lot of PUBG. I've actually found a few guys to play with. I guess if we want to discuss game stuff, the thing to go into is streaming platforms at the moment because
Oh yeah, a lot
the
of
ninja.
people are ditching Twitch, right?
Yeah.
But
So
doesn't that new platform have kind of Mormony social standards, like about profanity and nudity and
yeah. So the thing about that for me is, and I discussed this with a buddy who is actually is a big proponent of Twitch, regardless of what Twitch has done, was saying like the way that Twitch is. When I first joined Twitch, you were free to do pretty much anything you wanted. I mean, this was probably like 5, 6 years
right?
ago. You could do anything you wanted, and there wasn't a lot of backlash for it. I mean, like you couldn't get on there and fucking swing your dick around, have your tits out, whatever.
I don't know.
But
I
like,
still don't know why not, but yeah,
right?
you
I
got to use
because
premium Snapchat for that.
because it's the whole, and we can get into that in a minute. Like the whole behind that is ESRB ratings. Well,
Oh,
technically Twitch,
government.
there it is. And plus, like it's also ran by Amazon, who has an image I like to keep. But like, the thing about it for me is, so like Amazon in just the last year and a half, 2 years, has changed their terms of service drastically. Where like it used to
They
be,
platform a lot of websites as an aside.
yes, they have. And I've actually you've seen a few websites that have gone down, or gone under, or gone to the side. Like Caffeine in particular was another one that was coming out. There's a platform called Caffeine. It was a standalone app. You just turned it on and you went. And so they were on Restream with Twitch, and Twitch went after them because they were kind of holding on, like went after, but like Twitch had some lawyers get involved, and these guys are they're no longer a platform. Like they're a
Right.
platform, but they're not a platform, if you know what I mean.
They're just not important.
Yeah, or there's another one I can't think of the name. There's another one that was it was basically a like OBS's open broadcasting software
Hmm.
for broadcasting. What we're sort of using to record this right now, and it was a different type of OBS. Excuse me, but they were trying to kind of cater to a specific audience, and but like they're no longer a streaming application. They're a gaming like an esports platform now. They're like you can't
Okay.
stream to them. They're just an esports platform. But that's because like Twitch had some aggravations with them, and it became problematic to use
Twitch has
them.
a lot of power and money.
Yes, I mean it's Amazon. It's
Right.
Amazon basically. But the problem is like I think so in the end, and I make this reference as lightly as possible because and like some people who watch this are going to get uppity, and maybe nobody who watches is going to get uppity. I don't like Doctor Disrespect very much. I think he is a very fake entity. I do think his production value is through the roof. It's fantastic to watch if you can separate the person from the entity. You guys stop that. So like, so Doctor Disrespect, he's huge in Twitch. He's huge on Twitch, and like he's done great things for the platform. Ninja has done great things for the platform, but Ninja moved to Mixer. And
Right.
the thing about that is, so like right now they're different things, but people who have been on Twitch for more than a couple of years know that Twitch. You used to be like there used to be a. So one of the big things on Twitch for a little while was there were girls who did body paint.
Hmm.
And so like they would basically they slap on some pasties, and then they would paint like they're just patties
Yeah.
out, paint their
Whatever.
upper torsos. Right. They can't do that now. You have to have on a halter top, and now like you can't say any slurs. You can't say anything like that on Twitch. So they're all coming. There's going to be a point where they meet in a horizon, and they're essentially in the same place. The difference for me is that Mixer's already there.
Mixer
Um,
was upfront about it.
yes, they're very straightforward, and like Twitch is very, it's like the law system. It's very open to
It
interpretations. It's very
and that's the
like
thing is with Twitch is you might not have a problem until you get reported, right? Like,
exactly. And then once you're reported, there's some recourse. I don't want to say there's no recourse, but there's very little recourse you can take. Because like there's no getting lawyers
mhm,
involved, and there are people who like I don't want to say they're big streamers, but they're a modest following. They get 200-300 people to watch them a day, but somebody who has 200 or 300 people watching them a day probably has anywhere from 800 to 900 subscribers. So you
right.
figure they're probably making about 2.5 to 3 grand a month on Twitch. Um,
Nice.
and
Nice.
that's not bad money at all. I mean, that's more
That's
than
it.
most
That's
people
a
make.
livelihood if you got
Yeah,
nothing else. I mean, that'll keep you in food.
but like these people are, especially with the last terms of service update in in I think it was August or November of 2018, you saw a lot of these streamers disappear. They were disenfranchised, and there's very little recourse they could do for it because they were just like because Amazon was just like, well, the terms of service that you agreed to says we have the final say.
Right.
So it's just that. It's like maybe they're back trying to get their following back, and they started to rebuild. But like,
I mean, hopefully they had a Patreon or a Facebook page or something
yeah,
where they could keep in touch with their fans.
but that's that was around the same time that that was not it wasn't Instagram. What was it? Instagram, whatever it was, like
Facebook.
the premium
Facebook merged.
Instagram premium or
Oh,
like what
Snapchat maybe?
Snapchat premium came under fire. A lot of those were because like the smaller streamers who are females who do this stuff who kind of push these things on the side. Like it's just
Hmm.
they're easy ways to make money. And I think this harkens back to like uh kind of like the old timey belief system that like prostitution is wrong and that weed is wrong and all this other
That
stuff.
sex work isn't work type bullshit.
Right,
Yeah.
because like if you're willing, if you have a product and you're willing to sell that product, whose business is it to tell you that you can't sell that product if you're not harming anyone? You know what I mean?
Right.
So
And
I
by and my definition of harm is like causing their nose to bleed or their heart to stop.
yeah, I mean
Like
the big thing
it's
about
that kind of definition of harm is
no the big thing about the premium Snapchat wasn't so much that the women were doing it, is that they were doing it untaxed.
okay.
And
Yeah,
that
well,
was
I
a big
mean,
problem with it. Like
that's
they
it's your
went
individual responsibility to report taxes. I don't
yeah.
think that should fall necessarily on the platform.
Yeah. Well, the issue came when like there was a precedent set, of course,
Mhm.
as there always is, and then they were back taxing these women for Snapchat pictures,
For years
and
and years,
for
right?
years and years. And like, granted, like if you're making $100 a month, you know, and you're like, so we'll say New York State, I think like 10%. We'll just say flat. The flat tax 10% a month, you know, for $100 a month every month for 12 months. That's $120, you know, a year that you owe in taxes for that, right? Am I doing the math right here? $10.
Mm, if it's 10%, then
And
it's $10 a month.
yeah, so like 100, let's say
Yep.
$120 a year for tax. It's like you figure some of these women are doing it for 5 6 years. All of a sudden, you owe somebody $900 in taxes. Um,
Right.
so
Yeah.
like, and that's not a small sum to come up to.
It's not.
Um,
It's not.
so like it's very iffy. It was a very iffy area, but like, I mean, I I don't know. I think it was a weird situation where they just somebody realized they weren't being taxed, and then people jumped on it, and then a whole bunch of people were helping the
Re-
government
yeah,
reporting these
people were
women.
reporting them, and the government put a bounty.
Yeah,
Apparently, was a thing.
and like some of the big problems that happened from that, like some of these people that were making money doing that weren't even Americans. They weren't in
Mhm.
America. They were in Canada. They were in Britain. They were wherever. And then one girl in particular got in trouble because she was a dual citizen, and she was
Mhm.
on so she lived in Canada for like 90% of the year, but
Mhm.
she's from America, so she comes back to America and she visits her family in order to keep her dual citizenship, right? Because you have to be like what is it like 60 days or something like that, 30 days. I forget what the state. What you have to be in the states for a certain amount of time every
Yeah,
so many
and
years
it
to keep.
also like if you did want to revoke it, it costs a lot of money to revoke it, which
Yeah,
is something that a lot of people don't know. The United States is, I think, the most expensive, if not top five for sure, most expensive country to give up your citizenship.
yeah.
It's you can't just write the Department of State and say I am not a U.S. citizen anymore. You have to pay to not be a U.S. citizen and not be subject to our tax laws.
Exactly, and there's like that's why a lot of people who said I'm moving out of America, whatever, or like you see in the contractor community in particular, you see a lot of people who are labeled as expatriate,
Hmm.
which doesn't mean you're not an American citizen. It just means you're an American citizen who is a registered citizen of another company who is living abroad. Um,
Yeah, or you just have chosen to be abroad for more than a couple years, right?
yeah, so like you see that a lot, and like those citizens are still beholden to American
Taxed.
tax law. And
Yep.
people don't understand that because I have a lot of friends that are like, oh, I just if I'm working in Afghanistan, I don't have to pay American taxes. Like that's wrong. You
That
if
is
you
not
work,
correct. It just so happens that when the wars started, they passed some exemptions to
yeah,
encourage people to take those jobs.
yeah. And now the exemptions are still
They're
technically
sunset
there.
clausing. A lot of them are sunset clausing hardcore.
But I know I have a few friends who are like once you're above that 90K bracket as a contractor,
Hmm.
you are subject to heavy penalties. And you should definitely write off as much as possible. That's a discussion I want to have in a different podcast because I have a few friends uh, who contract that I would
Yeah,
like to bring in.
we need to have Zach on board for that one for sure.
Yeah, Zach, I got a buddy John who's been doing it for a few years, and he was out of the game for a bit. He had a family. He was in the process of trying to start a family, and he kind of like it. Things didn't go the way they planned, so he is trying to get back in the game now. And he was these like high level contracting with big companies. Um, so I'd like to pull these guys in for. Oh, I got the burps for a future podcast. But like I've gone on a fucking another tangent. So I think Mixer. Back to like this is man, we were fucking way off base here. um,
Hey
so,
man, that's how conversations go. I think that's what people want to hear is all
yeah,
the random things that we discuss.
yeah. So I think Mixer and Twitch are going to the same place, and they're essentially will be at the same modus operandi in the end. But at the moment, they're slightly different. And I think in the end, like I want to take TDL Gaming to towards Mixer, just because I
Hmm.
do like the way the platform is better. I like that it's a bit more. I think it's more polished than Twitch personally. Twitch feels very manufactured, and it's weird to say something from Microsoft is more personal than
More
something from
polished.
more polished and personal than something from somebody else.
That
But
is
it
weird. But
yeah,
they've been trying hard. I
they
mean,
have,
and they had the money.
and I think in the end, and I was this is why I started the reference earlier. I think Doctor said it the best. Like so, they got Ninja right. You pull in this guy who he has to be a significant portion of Twitch's revenue there.
Overall
Like it's
income,
like there's
right?
like 17,000 Amazon Prime subscriptions go we're going to Ninja a month 17,000. This is a guy who had 17,000 like Prime subscriptions and then another like 27,000 uh
Twitchers.
yeah like regular Twitch subscriptions. Like and you got to keep in mind so like a Twitch subscriptions come in three varieties, right? So you got your regular $5 subscription, then there's a $10 subscription, and then there's a $20 subscription. And the streamer
Monthly.
monthly, and the streamer doesn't matter which one of these it is. I believe because I'm not partnered, only gets half of each prescription or yeah, fucking subscription, right?
Half.
Half. So even with the $20 one, like they're not taking 250 off, they're taking $10 off.
Right.
I can't I don't know if that's 100% sure,
Right.
but the way it reads
Because
is that.
no,
But
I mean, compare that to Patreon, man. Patreon takes 8%,
yeah,
which I think is a little bit outrageous considering the number of content creators they have and considering how stringent the rules are and how carefully they watch everything you do. But if you have a $100 subscriber, you're going to get 92 bucks of it. And if you have a $1 subscriber, you're going to get 92 cents of it. That's
yeah,
much more fair than taking 50%.
yeah.
Much.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, I think Mixer does the same thing because as an industry standard, so a subscription on Mixer is $6 instead of five. There's only one tier subscription right now, so the streamer gets $3 of subscription. But I think
Mhm.
it's a horrible business precedent for the
The streamers.
user, yes, for the streamers, because like there are so many people who I know who have 300 subscriptions and like they're making like that's not an unwanted number to sneeze at, but at the same time, like if
Yeah.
they were only taking 8% of that, um, it would be easier to maintain the platform. So if you
And the quality of their content would go up because
yeah
they'd have, I mean, it's just like us, man. I mean, before we had Patreon subscribers, I couldn't afford to travel to make videos. I went to that in-range primary and secondary shoot in July, and that's something that without Patreon, even the little bit that it is every month right now, it would have been impossible.
yeah
And that's been valuable content. So
yeah, but I mean, and I think in range, primary, secondary, and all that stuff, like they're good. They're a good place to be with like it's quality. I think they're
right,
good
they're good
people.
people,
They're
but I
not they're
couldn't.
not they don't have a secondary agenda. They're just out there. These are guys who just they enjoy guns, and that
Yeah.
guns are what they do, and guns are what they want to be about.
And
Um,
Carl also does just general history lessons, which
yeah,
all of them, People get mad about some of the stuff he posts, but it's really apolitical. Like he talked about, the American soldier who shot up the concentration camp here in the States where we were storing American prisoners of war. And he just told what happened. And then you get people who spin it into sort of like the United States is bad. Like, no, it's just a thing that happened, dude.
Yeah,
Like, it's interesting because it happened.
yeah. It's not like he wasn't spouting some type of like anti-American rhetoric. He was just saying
Right,
like this is something that went on that nobody really knows about.
right. It's just a thing.
Interesting history. Yeah, no, I think I don't know. I think people are weird about that stuff too because like I love like and I this is an argument I've had with a few people like I love America. I love Americans. I think America's great. I don't like America's government. And people are like, "Well, how can you like America without liking the government?" I'm like, "It's easy. Like the government's people. I don't like those people. Like I think all of their opinions are garbage, and I think they should be replaced. Like it's
Yeah.
that simple. But like the idea of America is not dead. Um,
No, the idea of America lives on, and every small business owner, every person who gets their first job, every person who tries to buy a house, I mean, making a better life for your
yeah.
family.
I mean, that's
That's
what
America.
and that's like it's hard to explain to some people because they've been in the place they are right now for so long. Like I grew up, like partially in I spent some time in the foster care system. Then I like grew up in a trailer, and then I lived some in a house that was maintained by the church, and like
Hmm.
now I have, and there was a point in time where I thought I was gonna be dead. I had planned to be dead by 24. That's why I joined the military. I was like, I'll join the military. I'll join either the cavalry or the infantry. I'll join something high speed that's gonna get me into combat, and with any luck, I'll be dead by 24. And then like I
Yeah,
survived my
and I
first
know that's
deployment.
one of
Now,
the first things that we joked about when we started hanging out back in both of our
yeah,
cab days. It's like neither one of us is long for this world, and we,
yeah,
we thought it was hilarious, and I thought it was completely true. Like I
yeah.
figured I'd get popped on my second deployment, and then nothing happened. But it was the longest, most
It's
boring year of my
bullshit.
life so far.
Yeah, but I mean,
I
like
did, I did once, one time, the whole deployment. I was looking up at the sky like this because I could finally see a star in the dusty Cobb Adder sky, and a rocket went directly over my head. That's the one thing that I saw in 11 months of misery.
did you did
You
you
know?
did you make sure and put in for your CAB?
No, but the guys whose air conditioner unit it hit, they all got one. Yeah. Meanwhile, first deployment literally kicked an IED across a room, and
Yeah,
didn't
right.
nobody in our whole platoon got a cab except the guy whose toe got broken by an IED, you know. So it's like
Stuff always cracked me up, man. Like it's like my like the first deployment, like we were running around like on our own little J cop and whatever. Like you had to fly to get out there. I don't know, a place called Cop Corregidor. Like you couldn't drive in; all the roads were black. So we were all.
for
That's not
those
that's
who
not
aren't
racist,
military,
guys.
those who aren't military, um, the roads are color coded. So, green means you're probably safe to drive down it, you won't get blown up. Amber means drive down it, but be real careful. Amber is the usual status of roads in combat zones, where we're doing counterinsurgency warfare. And then red is an elevated version of that. Like EOD is going to be on call, QRF is going to be a little more accessible.
You need
And
to
then
have people on the ground actively searching for
right,
wires. Yeah,
right. And then black is like, if you go down here, you're going to die. We're not going to allow anyone to go down this route until we have cleared the neighborhoods around it and sent EOD down it.
yeah.
So that's what that means.
Yeah, so we were on this J cop. And like if you wanted to come, you had to fly in. So we were all running around, and like I might get a call from my captain or my old first sergeant for this, but like we were all running around in like PT shorts and brown tees. You know what I mean? Like nobody was in regs. We're all out there half unshaven. Like nobody
Yeah.
gave a shit because like you had to fly in to get there.
You might fucking die. I
Right,
mean, it kind of like people don't care what they wear when they're getting shot at.
right. And now like I've got two kids and a wife, volunteer firefighter. Like I enjoy my life. It's an enjoyable
Yeah,
thing to have. Whereas back then I was like I'm gonna be dead at 24. Like that
seems
seems
perfectly reasonable.
optimal. But I mean, I know it's and I don't know. I don't know how we got on this tangent again, but
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. No, but like so I think for the sustainability of the platforms, and I think this will happen soon because I know of a couple of big streamers who have referenced being uh, not necessarily recruited, but definitely like felt out to move platforms. Who have like
Right.
made the statement like, well, I'm not saying Mixer called me or sent me an email, but like they'd be like, but I'm definitely like I've been in talks with some people to like make some moves or something like that. So I think Mixer is gonna become a platform. It's gonna become usable, and I think that's where I want to move TDL gaming. For me personally, I don't know what T is
I
gonna want
mean,
to do with his stream.
I mean,
Um,
you guys always ask me what I think about this stuff. I just think leave it up to you.
yeah,
I mean, I just wish that I could get you guys some income through it. I try and send the main page over there, but it's just it's hard to build a following, man. It's
yeah.
hard.
Well, no, and that's the thing too. Is like there's not. I mean, I'm not gonna say there's not a lot of overlap for guys who enjoy army and enjoy guns and enjoy gaming, but like there's a lot
It's
of
huge. Yeah.
yeah. Like there's like you have to be a certain type of person to enjoy someone else playing video games. Not a certain type of person, like you have to have the mindset to do it.
Right.
And
Right.
not a lot of people do, and a lot of people who come to TDL, who come to Meme War Veteran, like they're there uh for the memes.
It's an attention span thing, man. Guys like me who like memes, I like something I can look at, process,
Yeah,
share, and then move on. Um, I think that the people who really want to watch streaming, and I'm not one of those people. I can't do it. If I'm going to watch a game, I'm going to play a game. Like that's
exactly.
me. But type of people that want to watch streaming or they have a better attention span. I don't know where that comes from. But another thing with TDL is we have a lot of, and it's not really unusual for a gun page on Facebook, but it is unusual for a gun page with our type of content. But we have a lot of 40 plus viewers, and they're
Yeah,
not interested in streaming,
yeah,
frankly.
yeah. I think a couple of guys who come over to TDLG have sent me messages about how like they make the joke about how like a lot of their peers don't even understand how to get to Twitch.
Right.
um, and like I think it's that is a funny thing to say because like I was thinking about that the other day that like a lot of our views of our memes and stuff like that. And I think it's because, and I don't want to come off as pretentious as saying this, but I think we filter a bit better than a lot of meme pages do. Like we don't like if we put up a meme, we're not just like, well, this is the meme and fuck you. A lot of times, like we put up a meme and then like we try to have a discussion about it. We try to interact with the
Right.
chat,
Right.
not maybe not necessarily interact with the chat, but like interact with the chat in a meaningful way.
Speaking
Like,
of interact with the chat, I posted that meme about how many people have the government killed in the 20th century, right? Did you
uh,
see the guy who said that I was a cop?
no, no, I didn't.
Oh my God. There's
That
like a
one,
whole string. There's a whole sub thread about how obviously this guy's a cop. Like
right?
like it made me laugh so hard. But also like I was really careful in my wording of that to say I don't think all police shootings are bad.
Yeah,
Um, when you have 544 shootings in the first half of the year, if 1% of them are bad, that to me comes out to many. I use the word many.
yeah,
I have no problem saying I said many police shootings are bad shoots.
yeah,
I stand by that. Um, but it was crazy because on the one hand, because I was apologetic or polite and said, not all shootings are bad in the way I worded it, I had the far left wing people saying this guy's a cop, he loves cops, he's sucking boot, and then I had far like legitimate cop suckers coming on and saying, "How dare you use the word many? That's very subjective. Give us specific examples." Like, motherfucker, this is the age of the internet. You want
yeah.
specific examples?
Google it.
They ain't hard, man.
Yeah,
Go get it.
yeah,
But I'm also not a cop. I have a few friends who are, but
yeah.
I'm definitely not
Oh,
a cop.
I have a few friends. I have a few friends that are like state police, deputy sheriffs, like city
Yeah.
police, who like every once in a while they'll call me on my personal cell phone number, and they're just like, dude, what the fuck,
Did you share?
right? And I'm just like,
Meanwhile, I probably shared it, and I'm just back there like,
right, and I've got to be like, and this is the thing, like, it's the same with any job you go to, like, you're gonna run into a shitbird. It's gonna happen. Like every job has them. But like they're just like, dude, what the fuck is your problem? Like it's not me, man. Like hey, I kind of agree with them, but I'm not 100%. Like you gotta understand, like there are bad cops, there are bad people,
yeah,
and I mean, like, and the thing about it is like I'm not saying like the thing about that meme was like it's not like you were saying all cops were bad. It's like
Right.
basically like
And
it's
it's
just saying
also not
like
like I'm saying all cops are good either. Like I was taking a if you actually read it with some comprehension and you didn't come into it with a pre-biased argument that you wanted to make, I made a pretty even-handed statement, and I was really careful about it.
yeah.
But people are still mad.
No, yeah. Well, it's like, again like harking back to what you said earlier. Like it's the internet. What are you gonna do?
What are you
Like
gonna do?
what
Right?
are you
Yeah.
gonna do?
And that goes along with what we're saying. Like we don't just post a meme and be like, it's the meme, fuck you.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, like I'm not responsible for your education.
Yeah.
Like if I choose not to engage in an argument with you, don't take it personally, but maybe just do it
Yeah.
yourself. Just look up the opposition points. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
I mean,
it's too easy.
it's funny. Like one of the things that like this is stuck with me, and like I don't know if it's necessarily a meme, but one of the things I saw very early on uh, in my like my meme career was somebody who said like, oh, what was it? It's something about how like what would be something hard to explain to somebody from the past about like a technology today, and it's the one about how like I contain a device in my
Right.
pocket with access to all the information from multiple countries and multiple time zones and multiple whatever, and I use it to look at cat memes.
And
And I'm
argue with
just
people on the
and
internet.
argue with
Yeah.
people on the internet,
Yeah.
right? And like that sticks with me. It
Yeah.
sticks with me so because like it's
Yeah,
it's
it's
so
it's like a
basic and
mantra
it's
for me.
so
Like,
yes. So like
yeah.
it's such a like it's a hard set because like it's the truth. Like I have access to that. And, like I have Duolingo. I have all these other like a couple of different like language apps and all this other stuff and like
Mhm.
weird like brain help apps and all this other stuff. But like a vast majority of the time spent on my phone is me looking at memes or me like looking to see how my meme went. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, and I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one who posts a meme and like sitting there like just refreshing the page every 2 minutes. Like, who's gonna fucking find this tasty? Like
Yeah.
somebody's gonna bite
Are untasty.
or untasty.
Or like,
Untasty is just as bad sometimes.
yeah.
Sometimes I post shit and I'm just like,
Who's gonna
God.
want to fight with me today? Yeah.
There are legitimately like one or two of our top fans who are in the top fan spot because they argue with everything.
Dude, you and I are thinking about the same motherfucker. And he is just so far up Trump's asshole. He's like a
Yeah,
tapeworm, man. Like, but he's a good dude. He just
yeah,
doesn't get it.
yeah,
And it's just like I'm not gonna ban him or block him from the page because
yeah.
like he legitimately is a good fucking guy.
Yeah.
And he doesn't say racist shit or
Yeah, he's not
any
a
of the things that make me think I got to get rid of this
yeah,
guy.
he's not a prick
Dear
about it.
God, he
He's
just
just
argues all the time.
yeah. Well, it's funny. I have a
And I love it. I love
yeah.
that we are able to have that opposition on the page.
Well, no, I think that's
And
great. Like a lot of
I think
pages,
it's
like
healthy.
outright ban people they disagree with who disagree with them because they think it's
Well,
too
man,
troublesome to deal with it.
after having like 7 or 8 posts reported in a matter of hours 2 weeks ago,
Yeah,
I started banning like out and out like the moms demand action types as soon as they leave one comment. Because I don't want them coming back after someone argues with them and reporting a post. And I was initially super conflicted about that, but at the same time, I we have worked hard to build an audience, and I think the things that we put out have value to our audience, and we owe it to the audience we have to avoid that fat zuck as long as we can.
yeah. I mean
And
that's
I every time I ban somebody, I'm a little conflicted about it, but that's it. In the end, that's a decision that I had to make.
I think and that's the thing too is like it's in the end decision one of us somebody on the TDL side has to make to do the ban right. But the problem with that is like that's only our end of the thing. Like the person on the other end of that
Right?
had to decide to write whatever they did. Like it's two
Yeah.
people who have felt
Why are
strongly
you?
enough about something to voice their well maybe not voice on our end, but like to engage in an opinion and stand there and stand on it.
Yeah.
And
And
that in
and
the end,
that's
that's
the
what it
thing.
is.
The left will always say you have the right to free speech, but you have the right to deal with the consequences. Well, if you come on my page and you say that all gun controllers or you say that all gun owners are pieces of shit and that they need to be rounded up by cops and pushed in a hole and shot in the head, I'm going to ban you.
Yeah,
That is an acceptable consequence of the bullshit that you just
yeah.
fucking said.
And that's the thing too is like it's I don't know it's fucking weird. Like I don't understand the mindset of people like that because like they're just like
Right.
oh like it's blind faith in a government
A
is
government
not
they all hate.
yeah.
I
And that's the
mean,
thing is
you
like,
think
it's
I'm anti-Trump, man. These
yeah.
people on the left, like,
Well, it's funny. Like some of the messages we
I
get
mean,
that
hate.
I see, like people send us messages and like there's like, oh, you hate President Trump and you hate this and you hate that, and I'm just like, you're talking to the guy who 100% disliked Obama. I can't think of a single thing in my brain that I liked that Obama did. And like at the same time, like I was one of those guys, and like you were there for it when I was like, listen, you don't have to fucking like the dude, but you got to respect his
Yeah,
fucking
they were
what
both in
he's
the
the fucking
military for
president.
that. Like
Like he
he was our commander in chief,
yeah, like it's
and it's the
in
same
the
now on
end,
Trump.
like you don't like the president, but at the same time, like this is a person who, well, like Trump might actually be the exclusion to this rule, this statement that I make. But like most of these people who are president, like at some point in their early 20s or 30s, were like, you know what, I want to be the single most hated person on every continent, and
Yeah,
they went after it. Like, and that's what you are. Like, regardless of whether you're good at the job or not, like there isn't a president who one side
yeah,
just unilaterally hates.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's a fact.
and
I
I
mean,
mean, so like it's
that's just absolutely a fact. And it is what it is, and I am heartbroken, like literally sad. People say, "Oh, you hate the president." I don't hate the president. I love freedom. Like that's where I'm at emotionally in this whole gig. Um, but yeah, man, I'm really heartbroken that the Republican Party has just given up the idea that they can have a primary.
yeah,
People always say, "Well, who's a viable alternative candidate?" Let the party pick one, dude.
yeah.
The party as a whole could say, you know what, this guy's rhetoric, the way he presents himself, um, the bills that he is asking his Democratic friends to pass in the Senate and the Congress are not acceptable to us. We're going to elect someone else,
Yeah.
and they could hold a primary. But it doesn't look like the Republican Party is even going to hold a primary at all.
Yeah.
And that to me shows that the Republican Party as a whole has bought into this winning at all costs bullshit.
W is a
Um,
W, right?
a W is a W. Doesn't matter what values you have to compromise to get it. And that really breaks my heart because I mean I've been a libertarian my whole life, dude, but I've always been able to vote R on certain issues and for certain candidates. Um, and and I'll be honest, man, if I break down most modern candidates by freedom issues and make gun control one of the freedom issues, along with Fourth Amendment issues, search and seizure, along with immigration issues, and along with education issues, very, very often the blue candidate is more freedom oriented on the whole
Yeah. Overall, like that's
than the R candidate is. The R candidates, I mean, I'm a stickler on two things. Like, if I was a single issue voter, it would be about these two single issues, which is immediately contradictory and thus to me hilarious. But freedom of speech and right to bear arms. Um, red flag laws infringe immediately on freedom of speech because whatever you say can and will be held against you before you go to court.
yeah.
And the right to bear arms to me trumps literally everything. And a party, either party, that will not expand my right to bear arms to me is unacceptable.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing. One of the things for me is like I was actually, I was a, I was raised in the family that ended up adopting me in the South. I ended up being fairly heavily Republican.
Yeah,
I grew up in the church,
in
Southern Baptist Church,
friggin'
um,
Kentucky, right? I mean,
in
my dad's a
Kentucky.
Southern Baptist preacher in Mississippi. Like I,
Yeah, so like it's you grow up Republicans. That's just the way it is. And so for a
yeah,
very long time, I was a very heavy Republican voter, very heavy Republican believer. And like at some point during my second enlistment, I I kind of I don't want to say I got woke, but like I definitely actually I realized the mindset I was in was toxic, like following a
right,
party blindly. And this was during Obama's administration when I realized that like following an administration blindly is not the answer. And
right.
so like that's about when I think, and actually it might have actually been a year or two before I met you where I realized that I was actually might be a libertarian. Um, Still haven't come out to my parents on libertarian on that one, so keep it hush hush. I don't think my dad would care. My
I
mom's
put
gone, so
signs in my parents' yard when I was about 22. It was and didn't go well conversation wise.
yeah,
Then I reminded my dad that at least I wasn't the Klansman who would drive through the neighborhood and put signs in our yard. So,
yeah, right. You're not burning the
dude,
signs, so
fuck those guys so hard.
it's so like it's
Did
funny
did
because
you ever
like
deal with that growing up in Kentucky, where the Klan would like just come and put shit in your yard? Like, they would put these terribly racist like signs in our yard. They'd throw flyers in our yard. They would put their like mailers in our mailbox without stamps. like horrible shit like that. Did you ever
Uh,
deal with the Klan on that level, like that
um,
individual?
we did when we lived at the church house. We did every now and
Yeah,
again, but that was more in like a suburban type area.
yeah,
But like the house I spent the better part of my raising in, probably the last like 6 7 years of my before I turned 18 and joined the military. We lived. I lived. It was a half a mile back from the road to get to my house, so we didn't get a lot of that stuff. Every once in a while, you would get the flyers, or like a
yeah,
neighbor would be like, "Well, there was a KKK sign in my front yard. Somebody stuck there."
yeah,
But around there, like in that area in very particular, like it was actually fairly diverse for farmland. So like
yeah,
those guys ran the risk of being shot if they showed up, because
yeah.
you might be on the white farmer's property, but you might be on
You
the
might
black farmer's
not.
property,
Yeah.
and
And
the black
Kentucky was
farmer will
big,
fucking
40
shoot
acres
you.
and a mule country, unlike down where I was in
Yeah.
Mississippi.
Oh yeah, no, like
Um,
the farm I grew up on, I believe he owned 60 some odd acres of
mm,
land, and like he owned this land, and like all the farm around it was owned by a family who all together owned about 195 acres
yeah,
collectively. So it was very like when it was farmland, like one had like a cattle farm, and then there was a corn
yeah.
farm, tobacco
It's
farm.
crazy now. Let's because even when we were kids 30 years ago, you could have a small farm of 190 acres. Now I bet there's not a farmer in the state of Kentucky with less than 3,000.
Probably not. I would
I mean,
doubt.
just economically. That's as an aside.
Yeah, no, you can't. Well, I mean, it's the way farms are, and this is one of those things that I would like to pull my buddy who's a farmer aside and talk to him about the way farms, in particular, as a food distribution business work and are taxed is borderline unethical. Um,
Oh, it's not even borderline, man.
but I mean, it's
It's
ridiculous. Like,
beyond.
yeah, well, I mean, like,
They get paid for what they do and for what they don't do.
yeah,
And if you're not big enough to make the margins on those numbers work, then a lot of times you can't stay afloat.
yeah, and like, in this, the funny part about it is like some farms are businesses that are almost literally too big to fail. Like
Yeah.
some of these people own 3,000, 4,000 acres of land. They've got a couple
Well,
million
out
invested
here,
in systems.
out here in the Midwest, man, you're looking at 20,000,
Yeah,
100,000, 200,000 acres of land, and it's owned by the whole conglomerate,
yeah,
literally owned by 3M. I mean, it's how do we get off on this? But yeah, it's crazy. Like the farm subsidies have empowered the corporations to take over the whole industry. They really have. And the answer to that has actually been a market answer in the form of organic foods and natural foods and foods that aren't produced through traditional means. But we see, obviously, now that that's been in existence for a little while longer, that has completely fallen back under the corporate umbrella.
yeah. Well, I said one of my buddies who I'd love to get on at some point, probably on the voice, because I don't think he's too big on showing his face. But
Yeah.
he's a retired veteran who does hydroponic farming.
Mm,
Not a very big plot. I think it's probably, if like I had to guess, I would say somewhere around like 50 by 25 foot flat. He does it on, and
mm,
makes a modest, like a pretty good amount of money off of it. From what I understand in
yeah.
his little area, and like he's 100%, like I think he has to pay taxes on it yearly because it's technically a business.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like he's not. I don't know. It's a weird one because he's a very interesting guy. He's one of the guys I actually deployed with
No,
back
let's do
in
it, man.
'07.
Let's do it. That sounds awesome.
But he's like
Sounds legit.
he went to college for etymology and hydroponics and all this other stuff. He's a very very well spoken guy. I really
Yeah.
probably give him a call and see what he's up to. Um, I mean I talked to him like 3 4 days ago, but just kind of see like what he's free. Um, all right, so we're like we're so
We're
far off on a
hours down the
tangent.
rabbit hole, man. We really gotta cut this thing off. I gotta get the kids to bed. They're supposed to be in bed an hour ago, and I just started talking.
All
Didn't
right, so we
stop.
so we'll put a pin in this stuff and we'll come back to some of it. I do eventually. I know we talked about this, so I do want to come back to this. I want to know about this tarantula migration in the
Oh, dude,
next.
it's so fucking cool. And I mean, I can cover like the basis of what it is. So these tarantulas are between 9 and 11 years old, and they're all males. They're all looking for mates. They all take off across southern Colorado and northern New Mexico, and they just look for something to fuck. So they literally go until they either die of exhaustion or get eaten by a partner. And that is like, to me, it's kind of inspirational, right? I mean, it makes going to work every day a little easier because I know that I'm not gonna like one day just stand up from my desk and walk out in the street and be like, "Fuck me or I'll die." And I'm really glad about that. Like I get to keep working at my desk until I just die of misery.
That's funny mistake. Fuck me or I'll die is what I say to my wife every morning.
Fuck me or I'll die. Dude, I'm
She's
gonna
still
use that
she's
tomorrow.
still waiting for me to die. But I mean, been
Oh
trying it for
yeah, I
years. The
guarantee
line.
you in that regard, my life insurance is paid the fuck up. But
All right, man. Well, so let's we're gonna sign off here, guys. Thanks for anybody that sat through all our wild tangents. Next time we'll try and keep them
yes,
down to a
just
minimum.
like last minute plugs. We are Tactical Dalai Lama. If you've enjoyed listening to this, you probably know who we are and what we do, which is all bullshit. Um, Jeremy and I have known each other for a goddamn long time. If you want to support us and support our broadcasts, we are at patreon.com/tactical Dalai Lama. If you want to support us and support our broadcasts without giving us money, we do post affiliate links to Amazon and eBay. If you click those links and then buy stuff, we get a little bit off the top of that. And we are so goddamn thankful for each and every one of you who supports us, who hates us, who gives us money,
Especially
who
those who
does.
hate us.
I gotta tell you, the haters keep me, dear God, yes.
Keep me warm and fuzzy. So on that same note, I think we are also affiliated with Brownells.
I am approved by Brownells to post affiliate links.
Okay.
Not I, but we.
Yeah.
However, the service that does provide those links has not approved us yet. I'm sure
Okay.
they probably will because Brownells did. And here's how that works, guys. I'm not gonna post links to things that I think are outrageous. Hang on, baby, just a minute. I'm gonna continue to post the same kinds of stuff I already do. You're gonna see a lot of 9mm deals with some coupon codes attached. Um, and I can't always promise that I'll post the cheapest stuff ever, but I'll post what I think is a good deal, and I promise to never stop doing that. I'm not gonna post stuff just for profits. Sometimes they do have some unusual and interesting products that maybe you can't get everywhere else. And I will post links to those as they pop up and seem interesting to me. You'll also see Tio and Jeremy posting links to things that they like. But we're not like sponsored by them. We're not going to stop posting links to other sites where there are good deals just because we have an affiliate relationship with Brownells. Brownells understands that. I was real upfront about that in my conversations with them. So I want you to understand the nature of the page isn't really going to change. Just hopefully we get some money to buy some ammo, go to the range, and make you guys some cool videos, and maybe keep the power on around my house if I lose my job, which could happen. I pissed a lot of people off, as you can probably tell.
Nah, he's a fucking teddy bear. Don't let him lie to you guys. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's so I an aside to that in the end, and before we sign off here, I'm also gonna drop the link to the actual Tactical Dalai Lama webpage. I'll put that in the description. We are setting that up. We have a guy who wants to do blogs and stuff like that. But that's all we got, guys. We do appreciate you for stopping by, whether you watched for 2 minutes or the whole God knows how long yet.
I think
But
we're at 2 hours.
about 2 hours.
1:45:11.
See,
So we talked for a few minutes before we started recording. So
about,
we're
about an hour and 40
yeah.
minutes. That's a bit long for a podcast. But you guys love us, so you watched the whole thing, right?
I mean, hey, dude, some of these primary and secondary podcasts are 8+ hours long.
Yeah.
So we're not even touching that level of YouTube-ness.
I watched primary and secondary. Like I watched their, I think it was the helmet when they did where they just like the whole bunch of like different helmets from like
The
Wendy
dude, yeah,
from
yeah.
HTT and all those other things.
Oh
Oh
man, it was
man, that was
hilarious.
such a good
Throwing
video.
steel at people.
All right, guys, thanks for stopping by. We'll catch you next time. Peace.